All right, fellas. I don't know. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on the game. I got a feeling we're going to be all over the place a little bit here, but Michigan wins 29-7. Who wants to start it off?
I guess I'll just chime in with, throughout the game, throughout the season, I think we've all voiced a little bit, maybe me more than you two, the frustration with Michigan's offense, I guess, just being so vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
But I do agree, Jared. I think you've been saying it at least the last few weeks, how, at least leading into this game, especially, Michigan State has no identity. Is it just Peyton Thorne? Are they trying to be Ohio State, throwing it all over? They don't have Kenneth Walker anymore, so they're not relying on the run. Michigan has an identity, it's clear, and it's Blake Corum and the run game and that dominant offensive line. And the other side of it too is, as frustrating as it is, they make the move to JJ McCarthy. You want to see him start throwing it all over. We're supposed to have all these great wide receivers and everything. It is, Jim Harbaugh has been this coach ever since he was at Stanford. He is a classic Bo Schembechler. You want to establish the run. You want to control the clock. You want to just grind away these wins. And he's not going to change his ways. Yeah, there's times that they, have to throw it 35, 40 times or something. But it's almost like you have to come to a realization that Jim Harbaugh is Michigan's head coach. This is who he has always been. Even if JJ McCarthy is the quarterback, they're going to let him throw when he needs to. When you got a running back like Corum, when you've got an offensive line like they do, this is really the game they want to play. And like, as frustrated as I was watching, being like, come on, open it up, like get this score going. I think that honestly, like thinking back now, I think the coaching staff just knew they were going to win this game. Basically, don't shoot ourselves in the foot. Don't turn the ball over. Don't try any crazy trick plays and throw interceptions and fumble, do all that kind of stuff. Let's just rely on Corum, give the ball to Edwards when we need to, let JJ run a little here and there. Our defense is going to do what they need to. And they knew they were going to win, basically. It is almost how it, looking back or, thinking back on it, I think the coaching staff knew the whole time they had this game in hand. They just had to take care of business. It would have been cool to see him put up 44, 50 points or something like that, but they didn't. They still won. They still won by 22 points. It was fine.
Am I alone in thinking, and I said this in instant reaction, and I've been saying this for a couple weeks now, we have McCarthy. We all would say he's probably a better passer than McNamara, especially, better arm, better deep ball thrower, it would seem. Have we seen him hit one deep ball this entire year? I feel like we haven't. And I know we have the offensive coordinators. One thing that I've noticed every single game this year that Michigan has had, the color guy has been ragging on these coordinators, whether it's Joel Klatt, whether it's Blackledge, whoever it is. They think that this offensive system is just flawed. And I don't know how you don't think that from watching that game against Michigan State. I almost feel like I need to go into the locker room and on the whiteboard, how there's those charts when you were a kid, or even they're still nowadays, where it's pick yes or no. Okay, you pick no. And then if it's for example, if it says if it's first down, hand it off to Corum. And then they'll have different, alternate endings where basically everything just on this big chart just leads all the way back to handing the ball off to Corum. That's what I feel like they need on the back of their play sheet. It feels like way too many times. It's first down and 10, we go pass. I understand that you're trying to switch it up every now and again, but Corum was running the ball at will, and he was in the zone. I mean, after every run, he was flexing on him hard that entire second half. And it's just frustrating watching how they just seem so vanilla. And I understand that, they don't want to make mistakes, and McCarthy, has a great completion percentage and all that, but it just seems like to beat an Ohio State, or to, obviously we want to win a college football playoff game. That's kind of our big goal now under the Harbaugh era. It really seems like we're just going to need more from our offensive play callers than what we've seen this entire year, not just on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, you both have good points. I think your point about McCarthy, I could see why they made the switch at quarterback, but he has not mastered the deep throw touch yet. He's got the arm. There's no question about it. And he's definitely a better runner than McNamara. But I think you might have tweeted it or something that McNamara seemed to throw the long ball better. And I agree with that, because he put a little air under the ball on those deep routes last year. I think JJ will get it. And to your point about the coordinators, I agree with Matt. I think Michigan knew they were going to win this game. They still ended up winning by 22. They ended up with 5 field goals, so they didn't get points as much as they could have gotten. So I think all in all, and let me ask your opinion on this too, Jared, because last week we talked about it. Are you just this a whole hum win? It's a good win for you because 22 points, you beat the Spartans. You knew damn well they were going to come out on fire, ready to play, and it went just like I said in my instant reaction. Michigan was going to wear them down. Sparty was going to play with them early on, but the better team was going to prevail. And they did. I don't care if they win by 40 points. They got to win one game at a time. And all I care about right now, they're 8-0. Do they have to make adjustments if they get to the Big Ten championship game and perhaps the playoffs? Yeah, they do. But it's a work in progress. And hey, we're just coming up on November right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is we got a taste of it last year. We beat Ohio State and then went to the playoff and just got absolutely trounced by, basically like a generational team in Georgia. So it is kind of like, okay, we're basically doing the same thing we did last year. We're just pounding the run. Yeah, that's great because like you've said, Jared, like this formula, you can win every Big Ten game. I think Ohio State, I've said a few times, it's basically a flip of the coin. Will this offense work against Ohio State? I guess we'll see. But against Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan State, Penn State, this is the formula that you need to win these games. So it works. But, the bigger picture, like you said, is you want to win a college football playoff game and then maybe the national championship. And I don't know if this kind of offense is going to work against a Tennessee or, Georgia again or something like that. So that's where, obviously they're practicing the passing game when they're at practice. But at some point, you got to do this kind of stuff in a game and get comfortable. And I'm starting to wonder, this whole season, it's all been about JJ. And, people are starting to wonder, like, yeah, can he not throw the deep ball or whatever? Maybe this receiving room isn't as great as we thought it was. Like I've seen people, whether I think Klatt maybe or a couple other people have broke down some plays and been like, these receivers just aren't getting open. And then, McCarthy is still, fairly young in his quarterbacking days. Maybe he's still making like one or two reads and then taking off, something like that. But maybe these receivers just aren't getting open for him. I kind of wish Andrel Anthony would play more. He seems like the best, or at least like the most talented receiver. He doesn't touch the field. So maybe that's coming down to it. But yeah, at some point, the other thing is too, he seems like he can hold up, but if you're going to give the ball 30, 35 times a game to Corum, I don't know if he's going to be around come the Ohio State game. You know what I mean? Like you got to do some different stuff. So I don't know what the formula is. It's working right now though.
Yeah. I came to that same realization during that game, Matt, about this wide receiver core. I honestly, does they have better wide receivers than us? I honestly think they do.
I think so. Yeah. Those top two for sure.
Two of them.
It certainly looked like it on Saturday. And the funny thing about it was how they were, Blackledge was saying how the coordinators told him like Edwards, if he was a wide receiver, he'd be our best wide receiver. When I heard that, I was like, well, why is he only like a spell back? Why is he only in, one every 4 plays? Let's just have him on the field all the time. I mean, we've noticed that he is probably our fastest guy on the team. Andrel Anthony. I just feel like we need more deep threats. Is Roman Wilson a deep threat? Is Ronnie Bell a deep threat? It doesn't really seem like it. And so I don't know if it's putting Herring in more or if it's Andrel Anthony or if it's Edwards. Like
Edwards
speed out there.
Use Edwards and Corum, put Edwards in the slot and put him in motion. They could definitely do that. They did last year, didn't they?
They did it a few times. I mean, and it's worked even this year that they ran him out on little wheel routes and stuff like that. He clearly can catch the ball. Right. So, we're trying to, I feel like we're splitting hairs here, trying to criticize this. You said it.
I know.
Ted, they're 8-0.
Right.
And I saw someone earlier today tweet something like, if I could look back and complain about the things I'm complaining about now, during the Rich Rod era and during a couple of those Hoke years, I'd be pretty happy. We're like I said, we're splitting hairs here. And the other thing is too, like when I was talking to my dad this morning about the game, and he was just asking like, what are people talking about with the game? And I was like, people are being critical, but really overall, Michigan dominated that game. I mean, in the second half, I think Michigan State had like 60 total yards. And 50 of them were on that one deep ball to Coleman, in the fourth quarter. Otherwise, you almost feel like at halftime in that locker room, and we'll talk about locker room stuff probably in a minute.
Yeah.
In that halftime locker room, I feel like Michigan State's coaches had to be like, listen, we got this. Like, let's just do what we got to do. Don't screw up, and we got this game. Because that third quarter, Michigan State only ran 6 plays.
Right.
Right. That way, I mean, the defense has been great all year, and I would give State props, man. I mean, that 4th and 1, Mel Tucker. I don't know if it was his call. I don't know if it's offensive coordinator call. Maybe the worst. How funny was that? Matt, if people who are listening, Matt just did the chop signal. I'd never noticed that was something they did like nonstop throughout the game. It's obviously whenever something negative happens, that's kind of like their, stay to the course type thing. But Mel Tucker, he was having an aneurysm on the sideline every time they cut to him, especially that first quarter or so. It really seemed like he was on edge. But
my wife, speaking of that, my wife was watching at least for a little while, and she said, not to cut you off, Jared, but she said that a few times, like, he looks really angry. She was like,
is he the angriest man in America?
Holy
my goodness.
Who responds to that? I'm just like looking at that man, dude. If he's like looking like that on the sideline, and we saw the video after the game where he's slamming locker room doors.
Right.
I don't know. You don't see Harbaugh doing that type of thing. I'm not saying Harbaugh's a perfect coach, but we just can compare the two. But I can't shake this feeling. I know you guys have it as well. There's something off about this offense, and
it's the red zone to me.
Yes, exactly. It's weird. It's like, given how well we run the ball, it seems like we should be putting up a lot more than 29 points against maybe the worst defense in the Big Ten. Mm-hmm. And we were really trying to run it up on them. We can't argue that. And the most we could muster up was 29. The red zone, I just don't understand it. That's when play calling is really critical. You would think that with the ability to run it down anyone's throat, that we would be one of the best red zone teams in the country. And I think we might be one of the worst. Yeah. It's something that we all know will be our eventual demise. But for now, let's just soak in this victory. But did you guys not agree with me when I said like it was just a weird feeling game afterward? I didn't really feel super high. I didn't feel super low. Obviously, I still great feeling beating Michigan State. But in terms of beating Michigan State, this is the weirdest I felt after it. Mm-hmm. It just was a very weird game, very stop and starty, tons of penalties. We were all kind of frustrated with the Michigan offense throughout the whole game. It just maybe I'm just being a disgruntled baby and I'm not being grateful, but that's just how I felt. I can't change how my gut told me to feel during that game.
Well, it wasn't like when Shea Patterson and that crew ran up 50 points and basically sent D'Antonio packing. It wasn't that kind of feeling. It kind of just felt like this is how it was supposed to happen. Yep, Blake Corum ran for 200 yards. Yeah, we beat him. And then, obviously, again, I keep referencing stuff other people say. I saw someone say basically what you were saying, Jared. They were like, this was really going to be a pretty unmemorable Michigan State game until those fireworks in the tunnel, in the locker rooms. And then now that's, all anyone's talking about. But it would have been much worse had Michigan lost and Tucker was 3-0 against Harbaugh.
Right.
Then it would have been completely different.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. And by the way, I do agree that Michigan has to come up with a better plan in the red zone. But
it's cool. It's all good and well to have the best kicker in the country.
Right.
At some point, you got to score touchdowns.
I'm going to have a take here, and it's gonna sound probably a little wimpy, but it started with Franklin, and then we've had this incident. We're going to get more into. And Jared, you've been there. Matt, you've been in that tunnel. They got to do something different. I mean, I know they're not going to do teams coming out in different tunnels, but they got to have a little better control to have, instead of having both teams even in that tunnel, coming out for the game at the beginning and leaving at the end. Do you agree, disagree? It's just a recipe for this kind of stuff. It's no excuse. There's no excuse for 10 players kicking another player on the other team, but they could maybe alleviate some of that. Just a thought.
I mean, yeah, definitely. But it's also one of those things this is the way it's been done ever since that stadium was built. And it seems like only the last couple of weeks, it's really become an issue. There have been other altercations.
Yeah, but
not
before.
Like this though.
Not like this. I think I blame this to the pandemic and politics and everything else. Everybody's just angrier than they used to be.
That's possible. You could also then say airplanes crash sometimes. So should we just stop flying airplanes?
I hear you.
Well, think about the coaches on both those. If it was Michigan, I'd say the same thing. I mean, we've seen it in that tunnel where it's like an Ohio State whoops our ass, and then they're trash talking Michigan. So we've felt it that way in our own home stadium before.
Mm-hmm.
But look at the two head coaches. I mean, you got James Franklin, who, remember a few years ago in Michigan State was, sprinting off field. He's had the problems with Michigan, Jim Harbaugh. Then you got Mel Tucker, who, Ted, you were just saying, or Matt, you were just saying how your wife was like, is he ever happy? He's the meanest, he looks the meanest guy in the entire world. So I think the players definitely embody that a little bit. As for the actual altercation,
Right.
I'll be honest. At first I didn't really have too strong of an opinion on it. I didn't know, with something like that, we didn't really know all the details. We only saw the one little video. Surely number one, not Andrew Anthony, which a lot of State fans really wish it was.
Mm-hmm.
Number one clearly went into the tunnel and was definitely like chanting something or talking a lot of trash. That I don't think it was totally, just all of a sudden they just decided to jump this guy because they lost. He was definitely antagonizing him a bit.
Yeah.
But regardless, who cares, man? Just let him go. How many times have we lost a matchup, Ted? You lost 9 your senior year. How many times have you lost a game?
What do you mean 9? Lost 9 what?
How many times have you lost a game and you've had to go through that handshake line?
Yeah.
And whether they say something to you or you just know how pissed off you are and how snarky they're acting, that you've wanted to do something like that, but you restrain yourself.
Had to, yeah.
And so it's just at that point, man, you just got to blame it on these State players. It just was a weird, bizarre situation. It looked like something out of like he was getting jumped on the street. It just was a scary situation. And it was just bizarre. All the different people sitting around watching a couple guys just swing helmets at a guy not wearing a helmet. It just was crazy.
Definitely crazy. And, kind of to answer your question a little bit, I mean, Ted, the one that you asked at first.
Yeah.
I mean, I do definitely think like kind of part of my answer is what Jared said. I mean, people, you just shouldn't act like this. You should maybe take the high road, but also kind of what I said earlier. This is how they've done these games at the Big House ever since it's been built. They do, when they come out, separate the teams, probably to avoid some altercations or whatever. But we've seen pictures after Michigan beat Penn State. The whole peanut butter and jelly thing was at halftime. After Michigan beat Penn State, players were in the tunnel together, dapping each other up, saying, hey, what's up? They're all friends, after the game, whatever. Obviously, this rivalry may be part of what you're saying about the COVID and politics and everything. This rivalry, the debate is always, who's Michigan's biggest rival? Is it Michigan State or is it Ohio State? Obviously, Ted, you're always going to lean Ohio State. Jared, you're probably always going to lean Michigan State. I've kind of seen the, both ways a little bit. This rivalry has like a different kind of like
it's ugly.
Hate. It's like anger. Michigan and Ohio State, you just dislike each other. It's just like an annoying, I can't stand Ohio State. Ohio State people can't stand Michigan, but Michigan State is almost like dangerously, the hatred is just like, people are going to fight. And, like we've seen it all the way back to like Taylor Lewan and Devin Gardner was getting his face like pushed into the ground. And there's just always been all this stuff all the way back to, Mike Hart and, his comments and everything. This rivalry is just different than the Ohio State one, to a point where 6, 10, whatever it was, players are jumping to Michigan State players are jumping to Michigan player. So
before you jump in, Jared, I just want to make a quick comment on it because it just came to my mind. I agree that Michigan dislikes Ohio State. I think to a certain extent they respect them, but I don't think there's any respect on either team between Michigan and Michigan State. And you can see it leading up to the game with all the yapping going on. You don't hear a lot of that between Ohio State players and Michigan players before that big game.
Yeah, I think a big part, I think, is because the players now are more Jared's generation. Most of what they've seen growing up is Ohio State dominating Michigan. So they probably are a little bit like Jared, like, why is this such a big rivalry? I don't really get it. They've just had it pounded in their head that this is this is the game, Bo and Woody. But really the hatred is Michigan State. That's really where it comes from.
I agree with that.
Yeah. It was weird. What do you guys make of number one running, like, how he kind of ran into the tunnel? Almost like we all saw the wide video where basically it's Michigan's waiting for these guys, Michigan State, to go in the tunnel. Everything's fine. We're waving them off. That's hilarious. And this guy basically takes it upon himself to, run into the tunnel with the State team. If I saw that as a State fan, I would be like, okay, this guy clearly went in there with trying to start something. It took some balls to go in there by yourself against 100 other guys, and we saw the result. I don't think, if I'm Harbaugh, I'm not giving that guy like a pat on the back. I'm definitely, giving him a little bit of a talking to. Maybe the punches are enough punishment. But I don't know why he did that.
I agree. And I didn't break it down frame by frame. Number one, why did he have his helmet off? Did it get ripped off or did he go in there without a helmet? Number one. And it just, it's my perspective, just without seeing it, like I said, frame by frame, that he's doing this. He's taunting him a bit. One of the state players probably shoved him. He might have tripped, went down on the ground, and then all of a sudden the swarm is on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when he was skipping into the tunnel, he had his helmet off already.
That's what I thought.
So, and it's one of those things, like he put himself in that situation. Like, is he at fault? No, because you shouldn't expect to get jumped the way that he did.
Right.
But he also could have avoided that situation and just waited for the Michigan State players to get in. And, do you really have to talk trash to them? They know they just got their butts whipped. So, like it doesn't really matter. But, he also didn't expect to get jumped. The video shows him he literally got assaulted. I mean, they were trying to pull him into the locker room, and who knows what they would have done if they got him in. Part of the disappointing thing too is there were state police in there doing.
I was going to make that same comment. And Michigan State police just standing there, not doing anything.
Yeah,
there's so many
other adults just watching. I saw a video of one coach. I don't know if he was a coach or some grad assistant or whatever he was, just filming it.
Yeah,
it's like,
what is? And that's my generation, man. What is wrong with my generation? Why is that the first move for everything is to immediately pull out the stuff? Like, there's literally a guy getting attacked by 20 guys, and there's a guy 3 feet away just filming it.
Yeah,
right.
And from what I can tell, he was wearing a Michigan hat. I'm just gonna film this, and I mean, maybe I wouldn't step in. 20 players against one. I mean, it's kind of a losing battle. But one thing I did find, and this is what really made me kind of think, okay, this is a Michigan State problem. Was the Michigan State's president basically came out and admitted how poorly they acted and how Coach Tucker is going to levy all these whatever consequences from it. I thought that was eye-opening. It's pretty rare that you see when we don't know any of the details. It's interesting to see them come out and say that. There must be more to this story that makes it even worse for Michigan State, I would think. And also, it's even if you would say one was an idiot, he was dumb, he started this whole thing. All right, so Michigan had one dumb player do something. State had about 20. So if you look at it that way, I just sore losers, man. I mean,
well, it was a bad look for MSU. There's no question about that. It was just a bad deal. They're fortunate the kid didn't get hurt worse than he was.
Right.
I think there was 2 players for Michigan involved, wasn't there?
Yeah, I believe a broken nose.
Yeah,
was the result.
Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, they're saying that they're doing a full on investigation of this to see if jail time is going to have to be handed out. So I'll be very curious. And then I think, Jared, you said it early on. There's video where Mel Tucker comes in and I don't know if he punches or he does something to the locker room door. So I don't know if something else is going to happen to him. You mentioned what their president said. So very interesting to see what happens there. But I mean, the big thing is it's just messy. I mean, it's easy for us to say, point fingers basically,
right.
But it's, to me, maybe because I've kind of been separated from it. It's different for you guys. You live right next to Michigan State fans. You work with them. I mean, I do work with a few, I guess, but basically everyone you guys work with and see on a daily basis, it's either Michigan or Michigan State. Yeah. Being separated from that for, a little while now, I've almost been able to take a step back and be like that rivalry. There's just a genuine, people don't like each other, just flat out, you will lose friends over that rivalry almost. I mean, that's almost how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, check the comments, man. It's hilarious to see. That's when true, the divide happens. Michigan versus Michigan State. People will put on the blinders for whatever. When that video was posted, if you looked at the comments, based on whether you were a State fan or a Michigan fan, it totally changed how you viewed what happened in that tunnel, man. Yep. It was people are taking shots at Andrew Anthony, even though he's not even, the guy.
He wasn't even in it.
Michigan people are commenting how, they showed more fight in that video than they did the entire game. I mean, it's a great rivalry. That's definitely a little overboard. We don't want to see that. I mean, it sucks for both teams. I got one final question before maybe we move on to Corona and our prep spotlight.
Yeah.
Do you guys like Mel Tucker?
It's funny. I was just texting a friend group that I talk about all the time on this podcast about this, and we in that text thread we bash Izzo quite a bit during. Ted, you would not like a lot of those texts, but we're not fans of Tom Izzo just because of the way he acts and on the sidelines and all that kind of stuff. But I think genuinely, I said this in this thread earlier today. Even though we don't necessarily like Tom Izzo, the basketball coach, I feel like deep down, we know he's probably a good dude. Yeah. He is, he's annoying and all that kind of stuff. But, he's probably a good guy for Michigan State and all that.
Legend.
There's something about Tucker that just seems off. Like he really just got there, got lucky with Kenneth Walker, and now he's making $100 million.
Yep.
And it doesn't seem like he has control of that program. I don't know. We don't know what's going to happen, the rest of his tenure there, but it just doesn't seem the same. I know we're comparing him to, like you said, to a legend at Michigan State, one of the best college basketball coaches ever, but Izzo would never let his program, something like that, happen with the basketball program. I guess is kind of my point. Like, as crazy and animated as Izzo gets, yelling at the refs, yelling at his own players, I don't think you would ever see something unfold like that with Michigan State basketball. And
well,
the whole chop thing, too. I'm just like, what is this? I don't.
Well, how would you answer Jared's question? Do you like him?
I mean, I don't know him personally, so I can't speak on if I like him. I don't like him as a coach. I will say that. I don't think he's all he's cracked up to be. He got lucky with Kenneth Walker.
I would answer it this way from afar, obviously watching it on television, watching how he operates. I don't like his antics. I mean, I just don't like the whole chop thing, his face is going to explode in anger, the whole game almost, I know, I get being intense. I understand that. I think a lot of that is now self-induced because of the contract. There's a lot of pressure involved.
Yes.
When you get $10 million a year, there's high expectations. That's like Alabama type Nick Saban expectations. And that's a lot to ask for Michigan State. It really is, so.
And then you add in the stuff Jared's brought up, all the Instagram off-season, Lambo and Pitbull posts and all this stuff. It's like, all right, what are we doing?
Every year it's gotten crazier and weirder. And, I feel like we all just kind of noticed the whole chopping signal on the sideline. I've never noticed that in previous years. I think the last year's success definitely made him a little too big for his bridges. I think there's still got to be something there, man.
Right.
I feel like he's probably a pretty good motivator. Obviously played a pretty good game. Michigan State versus Michigan. I mean, a couple plays bounced the other way. I think it's a lot closer of a game, maybe a 1-score ball game. And we all felt like Michigan was basically better at almost every position on that field other than wideout. And so it's just, I like him. I like him in this rivalry. I don't like his antics. I don't like his demeanor on the sidelines. I don't like his Instagram. I don't like his social media, but I like him in this rivalry. There's something about when he's on that sideline, man, and they're cutting to him. I feel like they're cutting to him a lot more than they were to Harbaugh.
They did.
He's just got some electricity toward him. And I don't want him to be, canned after this year. He won't be, but I wanted to see this, a few more years of this before maybe we get the next coach in there.
That's a good take there, and I will say this, and you both know I like Izzo. I really like Mark D'Antonio too. I thought he was a great coach.
Oh yeah,
a likable guy. He was the kind of coach I could play for, and he had class, and that I'll just leave it at that.